No.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Savita. Nice to see you on the screen.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So, okay.
A very warm welcome to all of you for our session of the Dalai Lama Chair. On behalf of the Visiting Professors Program, the Directorate in Goa University, I welcome all of you for the lecture on aspects of the Nalanda tradition, the methodologies of inquiry, understanding the mind and its training, and the nature of consciousness. I welcome Professor Khampo Tashi Tsering to deliver his lecture. Welcome, sir.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm really glad, to have this opportunity to share the knowledge or understanding that I have learned from some of these great Nalanda masters' texts, literatures, which are translated into English for a long time ago by great Indian masters and the Tibetan translators. And this, the program to studying in these great Indian masters' texts started around late 8th or middle of 8th century Common Era, led by a great Indian master, scholar, as well as great practitioner called Shankarakshita. And he very carefully guided that time Tibetan emperor how to really bring the Nalanda tradition from India to Tibet. And he very clearly instructed to the emperor, because Tibetans, you have your own language and written language. It is very appropriate to translate these great Indian masters' texts from Sanskrit into Tibetan. And the contemporary Tibetan emperor Tizung and following the Tibetan leaders for nearly 300 to 400 years continue to translate these great Indian master. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama says 17 Indian Pandits, although there are more than 17, but he selected, because these 17, starting from the Nagarjuna 2nd century and all the way down to like Atisha and a little bit other around 11th or 12th century Indian masters' texts are translated, as I mentioned yesterday. There are about 230 something volumes in Tibetan. So I feel I'm very fortunate being able to study not all the those amazing texts, but some of those important texts in ethics, in psychology, epistemology, philosophy, and so forth. So now, because of His Holiness Dalai Lama's, the wish and his dedication, and the Goa University's leaders, such as Vice Chancellor, in this create this opportunity. So I feel very grateful given this opportunity. So I would like to briefly to recap some of the important topics that that are shared yesterday, particularly that two points that are mentioned at the beginning of yesterday's our talk, which is again really very much Nalanda masters, the tradition or their sort of amazing skill and methods, how to train ourselves individually and collectively. When I say train, our, the inner world, our mental states, our consciousness, our emotions, make favorable to ourselves and to the community and to the societies. And that is, the familiarizing ourselves, the setting up positive intention, positive motivation, how we're going to spend that particular month or particular year, particular month, particular day, or sometimes that particular hour and in particular event. And, observing, analyzing our intention or the motivation to engage in or to start the day. For example, today, 16th of March, 2021, the Tuesday morning when we woke up, to make sure to start with a positive, a constructive mind, which I mentioned yesterday. And today I want to add it on a little bit on that, which I deliberately didn't say that yesterday, because we need to cover one of the topics for the yesterday. So these great Indian masters from Nagarjuna, Aryadev, and so on and so forth, they clearly had realized each and every human beings, no matter how unfortunate background they are or unfortunate nature they are at the present, nevertheless, each and every human beings have the potential, potential in the mental level, have the potential to really, to experience many layers of positive thoughts and emotions. Here, when I talk about positive thoughts and emotions, I'm not talking about at the religious beliefs level. That's another layers. But before that, as a human beings, without any, uploading, culture and, or environment influence, religious philosophy, without all those later that we upload, if I use that term, culturally, socially, philosophically, religiously. Before that, basically we all have the ability and the potential to experience in a very pure, good heart. It is the matter of whether we explore that good heart. And that is what I really feel important. And for example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says very often, most of those amazing knowledge, amazing realizations, understandings, they are gained or developed through reading, listening, contemplating these great Indian masters. And on that understanding, on that knowledge, he tried to work to the world, outside world, to really to bring those knowledge to. And one of that, what he constantly share to the public, and also sometimes at the personal level, to say, have a confidence within ourselves. We all have the potential, same potential to experience, to act, to experience some of those, good nature, like the genuine sense of love, compassion, altruism. When I say love, compassion, altruism, I'm not talking, not sort of applying any particular religious concept of love, compassion, or altruism. Just, in the very, what His Holiness quite often says, that, the without any religious element. And that is really something we should explore that and train ourselves, familiarize ourselves in the morning, during the day, and in the evening. I usually share to my friends when I have the opportunity to lead classes. And this is very much in the past of my Buddhist friends. During the day, even if you have just 1 or 2 seconds, seize that opportunity, and to really to bring a positive mind to yourself. And that is which, as I mentioned yesterday, people who do that, I'm sure you have, fully experienced the benefits of that. People who are not that much familiar with doing that, I would, very gently encourage you just to do a few weeks in the morning when you wake up. Just to send a positive how you're going to spend your day. It doesn't need to be unique activities, just routine, carry on your routine activities, but set a positive, a constructive mind. That's which I mentioned yesterday, and I repeat it today. I may repeat it tomorrow too. Sometimes, repeating again and again, and it sinks in our psychic and have some kind of impact. And the second, which I mentioned, is really to give 5 to 7 minutes to build a sense of stillness, mental stillness, calmness, and the clarity. Just in the Indian tradition, this such as yoga, these are very, very fine, the tradition. Very, very useful to, and breathing meditation. Just simply breathe gently, breathe as usual, then not bringing any kind of thoughts or expectations or anything like that. Simply, staying to the present moment, watching your breathing. And by doing that, in a regular basis, will bring sense of stability. Even though I myself had, experienced this, every now and then, and particularly now being the head of big monasteries, it is not that easy job. So, quite often due to my commitment, my external world, the administrators and all, they may come with lots of problems, and so therefore not sort of it is challenging job, but doing regular basis some form of calming general state of mind, just bringing to the at the basic level of stillness and the clarity, which I found very, very helpful. Those external, the challenges, monasteries, commitments, although when I hear unpleasant, but deep down these external challenges do not disturb the sense of calm or peace. So, this is part of the Nalanda tradition. This is part of this great Indian masters tradition. We should bring back to our society at the individual level, at the community level, at the university, or no matter whatever modern education that we are studying. We need to take care our inner world by using these amazing traditions. So that is just
Yeshila,
yeah.
can I interrupt? Could you please switch off your video?
Okay.
Video, because it's getting be on.
Okay. I've switched off. Is
Only
that better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that is my brief recap from the yesterday's my talk, and which I will, as I said earlier, I may come back again tomorrow or my next, the talk. So yesterday we mainly touched on some of the methodologies that these Nalanda masters had used and taught to their followers in order to enhance our inner world, such as love, compassion, altruism, calm, understanding, and so on and so forth. And that's what I taught that. And another important point which I mentioned yesterday, these three qualities of learner, as we all are learner, we all are learner, and being the learner or trainee, what is important is have a very open mind, very open-minded. And in other words, these great masters, they used terms saying, there are different translations, non-partisan or unbiased attitude, that kind of mental state, very open mind as a learner, which is very useful. The other two are, we all know, intelligence, have the ability to, analyze, investigate what is said, what you read, and so on and so forth. And and third one is, that kind of yearning to learn. And I don't think we need to say that much to the university level students. So those are the three features. Now today we are going to move to the second topic that I thought I will talk. That is the understanding the role of mind in our everyday life, which these great Nalanda masters had taught very, very crucial. How our mental states, our minds, thoughts, emotions play a big role in our everyday lives. Whether we carry on, our routine activities, or we do some unique events, participate in unique events, our mental state, which I briefly mentioned yesterday too. So this is what we need. We are going to talk today, and also may have a little bit tomorrow connection with that. And I usually suggest to my colleagues, my friends, when I was leading classes in the West, generally speaking, this is again generally speaking, Westerners are quite quite skeptical when we talk about all those, when they come to the joining the religious community, that very skepticism, quite often not there, but generally speaking, they are very skeptical to the things what they are listening, what they are hearing. And I said that's really important. That's very important to have that kind of positive, constructive, skeptical mind when we are, and in that, what I say is, really see or observe in a day or a week, in our daily activities, in our daily preparations, in our daily engagement with the events or planning, how much we plan or how much we prepare relation to our mental states, involvement with that events or that activities or that planning, and how much we spend our time, energy, and resources for the external through the external sort of arrangement, external development, external collection to make our today's life, tomorrow's life, day after tomorrow's life, our family's life, the more sort of happier, the peaceful, and when I did this many years ago, when I started this 2-year learning course, and I did a 6-month, asked those people who follow the course, do some kind of, write a diary, how much they do between the two in terms of the preparation, mental preparation, and the external, the conditions, external things, preparation to make our lives, happier and events more successful and so forth. And it was very clear. We pay much less attention to work with our inner world, our minds, thoughts, and emotions, to make our lives happier, more peaceful, more what's called joyful. Then we prepare for the external things. Now, external things like in the West, and also it's the same in India. I teach them to saying, you do lots of research, lots of collect lots of information. Which mortgage company is better to buy? To borrow your mortgage in order to buy the house or the flats. Then to do the analysis, investigations, and so on and so forth. Which mental state is more constructive, more helpful and useful to myself and to others. And so that is something which useful. And I'm talking about this, and not just the Nalanda masters, they what they understood, and also there's nothing wrong to bring the Gautama Buddha in here, as which is most of the Indian people know, how he depart from his the royal life to a monkhood, homeless life, and eventually he had found doing the external, including ascetic life, really giving hard work, hard time to one's own body, not necessarily will bring, in fact, not that from his experience, didn't bring a really genuine sense of happiness or the joy or the fulfillment or the realizations. Then he switched to the looking at the inner world, that is the mental states, and so on and so forth. So now here, this this is, I'm not talking about a religious point of view. I'm just talking about Gautama Buddha as a human being. He was a human being. He came on this planet, in particular on this continent in India, therefore it is something useful us to look at. And so the point what I'm to make here is, these great Indian masters, they explained to make one's own life more peaceful, more, prosper, more sort of joyful. It is, of course, externally we need shelter, food, medicine, friends, and so on and so forth. But it is also equally important to working with our mental states, minds, thoughts, and emotions. And basically, if I summarize in here, these great masters, Indian great masters, have realized, the most, what you call the troublemaker, if I use that term, or most, the main cause that our life, is not that kind of deep down, not that kind of peaceful, or if I use the other term, and no matter what we have got, in terms of the family, in terms of the status, in terms of all the external things, no matter we have got, but still there is a deep sense of dissatisfaction, or there's some kind of nagging feeling, which I normally use that term. Deep, there's a nagging feeling, something is not correct, or something is not complete. And that kind of what we humans sometimes, in the Buddhist term, the term is used in Sanskrit, dukkha. And no matter whatever we have, and deep down there is a sense of dissatisfaction, and sense of empty, something is not complete or not, and to work with that, and to work with that level, then we really need to pay attention to our inner world. And why it is due to these Buddhist, these great Indian masters have found, including the Gautama Buddha, they within our mental state, certain levels of our mental state, there is a distorted sort of elements, elements. As long as that distorted element is there, the confusion is there, or another term is used in English, ignorance, avidya in Sanskrit, or moha in Sanskrit, confusion. As long as that kind of mental state is within us, we will, no matter whatever we got, we will not be free from that deep-rooted nagging feeling of something is not complete or not, and so that is something I find it quite helpful and useful to know. These great masters have repeated saying that. So then, what is the solution? What is the solution? What is how to really sort it out? How to get rid of that, rooted in our psychic or ingrained in our psychic, that element of distortion, element of confusion. And that is only through, what you call the cultivation, through the cultivation of panya, wisdom, knowledge, or knowledge we can use in knowledge. That, through cultivation of knowledge or cultivation of wisdom, prajna, then that distortion, that the confusion deep-rooted or deep ingrained our psychic can be uprooted, can be eliminated. And this is what many of the great these Nalanda masters have repeated, regardless of different philosophical schools, different philosophical thoughts they have. But that at that level, it is what's called, they all agree, that deep ingrained within our psyche, that confusion or ignorance should be eliminated, and elimination is done through within ourselves the cultivation of prajna, wisdom. And that is, so we will come more detail on this coming sessions, how to do these things. So that is another one basic structure which may be useful to bear in mind. Now then, to talk about this, if that's the case, first of all, our mind, our consciousness is our, what you call the emotions play a big role in our lives to make our lives happier or miserable. Then we need to learn. We need to learn them how to handle this, how to learn, and we need to learn this. And this is quite often His Holiness Dalai Lama says, we need to create a map of, consciousness, or map of mind, consciousness or mind or awareness. I'm using like a synonymous, interchangeable, which will come later today. So that to really ourselves, within ourselves, to have some kind of map, like when I was in London, my earlier time, as I moved to London 1994, and to use London Underground, underground, they call it underground, which has so many lines, the Piccadilly line, Bakerloo line, and so on and so forth, not to get confused. Which station, which line you are, you are using. Then this London Underground or the tube map is something extremely useful, colorful, and very nicely, printed. And similar to that, I think it is quite useful, as His Holiness also says very often, to us. And these masters, these Indian masters, great Nalanda masters, have really put like a map, not in a drawing, a diagram or anything like that. These days we can do that, but putting in a different list, different categories, and giving a different, giving definitions. And these are the like a map, and which is quite useful to for us to explore that. And in that, there are three genres in these great Indian masters, like saying the Abhidhamma literatures, a group of written by great Indian masters, like these two brothers, Asanga, Aya Asanga, and the Vasubandhu, I think around 4th century, Common Era, and the others, are just naming two. And they wrote, such as Abhidhamma Kosha, Abhidhamma Samuchaya. These Abhidhamma texts really, explains different kinds of mental states, at the different, what we call, when we are in this kind of existence where, where we are in this, I'm just going to use one Buddhist term, desire realm. Desire realm in the sense, the realm where all the 5 sense objects are there, and the 5 sense consciousnesses are equipped within us, and we are able to interact with our 5 sense consciousnesses, from sight to tactile, and 5 sense objects, shapes and colors, to touch, to all that realm where we are here is that realm called desire realm. And the different realms are explained by these masters, and they talk about in a particular realm there are these particular mental consciousnesses, a list of different mental consciousnesses, and so on and so forth. So this Abhidhamma text is something really, really useful to understand the categories, different types, of mental states that we can explore, because they talk a lot on that. For example, which we will coming our lecture, such as they talk about mind and the mental factors. Mind and mental factors. That is, how they categorize. And within the mind, saying the main mind, within the mind, what you call the sense consciousness or sense mental states, and the mental states. And within the mental factor, then there are different lists. So that kind of literature is there, Abhidhamma, called the Abhidhamma literature or the texts. Then there is another group of texts which I briefly mentioned yesterday, Pramana. In others, in English, modern language may use epistemology, epistemological literature. Literatures that explains, how our knowledge and how the knowledge are cultivated, or knowledge is, I don't know whether it's plural or singular, cultivated, developed. And a particular distorted mental state, how that distorted mental state can be, what you call the challenge by a wisdom, or by a reasoning analysis, and so on and so forth. These particularly, the Dignac 4th and 5th century, and the Dhammakirti, and some other Nalanda masters, they talk, and they really talk about such as, within the mental state, direct perceptual mental state, conceptual mental states. Again, the different at the sensorial levels of perceptual mind, mental levels of conceptual mind, and within the conceptual mind, different, the conceptual mind, and so forth. And that is in the second, genre or second categories of literature by these great Indian masters. Then the third is more like, the manual for contemplative practice. How to, if particular emotion, like for example, commonly, if self-centered attitude, the nature of self-centered attitude, when the self-centered attitude occurs, what are the means and methods to tackle that self-centered attitude? What are the disadvantages of holding the self-centered attitudes? And what are the antidotes to really tackle such as the self-centered attitude, or the strong anger, the aversion, and so on and so forth? Such as, this very famous, like Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna had written many texts, like the Ranabali, in Tibetan region Tengwa, and very beautiful text written to one of his friends, king to his friends, and so forth. And another important text written by another great Indian master, I think 7th century Common Era, Shantideva. There are different English translations. I usually use saying Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which has 10 chapters. And really beautiful, like sometimes like having dialogue with the anger, with the tolerance, with the self-centered attitude, and like a piece, some stage like a piece of essay, writing an essay, how to deal with the anger and jealousy and envy and so on and so forth. I'm just sort of listing the a few what you call the name of the text within these 3 genres, or the 3 different, slightly different group of literatures, to learning about the mind's thoughts, consciousness, and so forth among these great Indian masters. So those are the something, of course, we shouldn't, I must say this here, and these great Indian masters, when they talk about thoughts, emotions, minds, consciousnesses, they also have, philosophical interpretation, philosophical involvement, different theories, different what you call the explanations, but these are some kind of common, which I mentioned earlier. Confusion is deep-rooted. That deep-rooted confusion within our psychic is one of the fundamental sources or the causes that make our life not complete. Constantly feeling sense of that something is not correct or something is not complete, and so forth. So those are the something which just to mention. Then now to move to the going to what is then, if that's the case, if the mind's thoughts, emotions, consciousnesses, they play a big role in our life, in our daily lives, in our everyday lives, to make our life, happier, or on the other side, more miserable, or incomplete, and so on. So if that's the case, then what is mind? What is mind? What is consciousness? What is this so-called quite often term is used, inner world? And maybe I will say this again here briefly. Although I haven't seen that kind of explanation by great Indian masters, directly from their sources, but my understanding and listening, reading, contemplating, their amazing texts, commentaries, and outer commentaries, and also Tibetan teachers, like this great Indian Tibetan teacher, Jesung Kaba, and this current existence, this human existence, which we all cherish, which we all want to keep and live very healthy, very, what called very peaceful, individually, within the family, within the community. And as His Holiness Dalai Lama says, and I thought that's very, very clear, he says, we need hygiene of emotion. That's his own words. We need, because we all have hygiene of external, particularly, I will tell you one, my culture shock when I moved to West from the monastery. Not while I was in France, in Nalanda, my first 3 years, South France. After I moved to London, then I had lots of, contact with the ordinary lay, the Western community. Not necessarily all are English. And the first time that I saw, I was invited to have a dinner, or one of a couple who comes to my class in that Buddhist center, and they kindly invited me to have a dinner. And they are quite well off, financially they're quite well off. They live in London, quite a posh area, and so when I saw, I think they started around 4:30 in the afternoon, and they spent a long time and drank tea and juice and so forth. So I went to the bathroom, bathroom, and the entire bathroom floor was, carpeted, carpet, beautiful carpet, and there were many beautiful objects, lots of books to read. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, what's going on here? This is bathroom. Why they have a carpet in the bathroom? Because I lived in this monastery. When we first moved here, we don't have bath, toilet or the loo. They just go to the open air. So anyway, then for example, another thing is kitchens are very big, so that kind of hygiene, to keep things very clean, those areas, because to keep healthy physical body, and also I think something have a little bit element to show your status. Now, this is what I thought is important, which His Holiness says very often, to keep the inner. The hygiene of emotion, hygiene of thought, which is, and our entire existence, that where we are, what we are here, as a Tashi, I am a Tashi, as a Tashi. It is not just this physical body that we all know. Whether our emotions, thoughts are part of pure our brain or not, these are just still in a state of debate, but we all know, we all experience there's something different from this body called thought, emotion, feelings, and so on and so forth. And we must, be aware of that. We need to, as we take care of our physical body, for example, I have a scale to really check my weight, not put weight while I'm here. So like that. But we don't have any measurement to measure our inner world, whether it's hygiene enough or not, and so on and so forth. And that is something here. Sorry, I sidetracked a little bit on this. So what is mind? What is mind? What is, the nature of mind? So to talk about that first, as yesterday there was a question. There was a question about, what is different between mind and consciousness. So there are 3 or 4 terms, I think in Sanskrit, as well as in Tibetan, which translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan, all are referring to the same thing, that is in Sanskrit, Chit, which in Tibetan translated Sem, and in English they use mind. Then, the Gyan in Sanskrit, and which is translated in English, consciousness, in Tibetan, Namshe. And then there is another, the term that we use in Tibetan quite often, that is, in Sanskrit, Sampati, that is, awareness, and in Tibetan, Rigpa or Lo. So these 3 terms, mind, consciousness, awareness, are referring to the same thing. In other words, these are synonymous. So these are synonymous, but because of, for example, I'm talking about from the Tibetan language point of view, sometimes, using in Tibetan, Sheba works better. Sheba is that similar to Namshe, which is translated in English consciousness. Instead, sometimes Namshe is better to use in a particular what you call the sentence with the subject and the verb or any reason. Then they're using Sem, which is mind. And I think it may have similar in English and it may have similar in Sanskrit, although I'm not the what you call the linguistic author, not expert on those two languages. But these are synonymous. So that's the first thing that we need to bear in mind when we talk about nature of mind. First, to clarify that usage of term. So in the future, when I use awareness in English or consciousness or mind, I'm referring to the same thing, same thing, not different. Now then, what is that? What is mind? What is consciousness? What is awareness? And here, these great Indian masters, their explanation about the mind, consciousness, or awareness is not a static phenomena, not a static or not as some kind of enduring phenomena. It is a episode, or it is a what you call it is a events. It is a events of moment by moment, moving what you call the phenomena. It is not a static, it is a some kind of what you call the moment by moment, the first moment of consciousness or the first moment of mental state move to the second moment and the third and the fourth, and that creates the mental event. For example, when we experience, the love, compassion, or anger, these mental state, these consciousnesses are not some kind of one enduring phenomena. It is a momentary events of anger, jealousy, or attachment, or the compassion or love. So that is something which quite useful to. So then, what is that moment? That moment, is awareness or consciousness or the mind. But that is not a static phenomena. It is a what you call the activities or the events of awareness, events of consciousness, not a one. It seems, although I'm not sure, it seems in the Western philosophy or some other like the modern cognitive science, they may, although I must say this, stress this, I have no knowledge that much. I've read books and I have gone to some of those lectures and so forth, read some articles, but I have no that kind of formal, deep, detailed study in this Western, So but it seems to me, in the West, the mind or consciousness, mainly they may use the term consciousness. Consciousness is some kind of enduring, phenomena. Enduring phenomena, the sort of a single entity enduring that kind of, over the time, and might present the anger or the compassion and that kind of some kind of what you call a single entity or a single sort of enduring entity over the time, and that kind of although I must say this so the consciousness or awareness or the mind is in this Nalanda master's understanding is it is a momentary event of knowing, event of awareness, event of conscious, momentary, and that is something which quite I think quite useful to bear in mind. Okay, now then so how can you define that awareness or consciousness or the mind? How can you define? And there is a very simple definition. If I use that definition, is mentioned by many of these great Indian Nalanda masters. Very, very simple, yet very profound. And in fact, there are only two. When we translate it in English, there are two words: clear and knowing, sometimes translated, or clear and awareness, or clear and aware, or sometimes clear instead of clear, luminous and knowing or awareness, aware. So that is really those two words, clear or luminous and aware. These two words really defines what is consciousness, what is mind, what is awareness, and so that is and this clear or the luminous have several different meanings. One of the common interpretation by these great Indian masters, the mind, consciousness or awareness clears the object, clear in the sense luminous the object, like when we light a candlelight or when we switch on our bedroom light switch, press that the light, it illuminates the entire content in our bedrooms. Similar to that, consciousness or the awareness or the mind luminous the object, the content of the internal world as well as external worlds. So in that sense, as I used the analogy, the light clear or luminous the contents of the room, and similar to that, awareness, consciousness, mind, reveals the content of our world, external world as well as internal world, subtle or gross, importance or not importance, and that is what here, and different from the external, that material light, like the candlelight and as I just used analogies, the light in our bedroom. Unlike that, those our consciousness can luminous, can reveal the things and events regardless of distance, of physical distance, or regardless of time distance, or For example, I can close my eyes, and I can have, clear sort of image of my study room in London. Although that image is not real study room in my London flat, but I can have it very clearly, in the mental level. Or, for example, I can clearly, imagine, or can clearly sort of visualize my childhood while I was in a boarding school in a refugee transit camp. I can clearly have that. Or I can very strongly imagine or strongly wish how, my retirement or where I want to live. So these are the time, the external light, external what you call the thing, the lights or the things cannot reveal those, but the mind, mental state, awareness. Although whether they are real or not, that's the different argument which we can talk later. But that is here, the what you call the meaning, one of the meaning of clear, out of those two syllables, or one of the meaning of clear. Then the what you call the another the meaning of clear is its own awareness or the consciousness or the mind, its own nature. Not the first one is talking about it luminous, the external or the object or the content. Now the second meaning of clear, the definition clear and awareness or clear and knowing, luminous, in the sense clear, in the sense the basic fundamental, these great masters have repeated again and again, the fundamental nature of the mind, the fundamental nature of your mind, my mind, other people's mind, has not penetrated by the distortions, by the ignorance. In other words, the fundamental nature of the mind is, so quite often the term is used, pure. Pure in the sense has not polluted by the distortions, by the ignorance. And that is also one of the meaning of clear. But this has a philosophical, the interpretation, different, these masters have, a slightly different philosophical understanding of the, the external world as well as internal worlds. As yesterday, somebody asked that, what are those 8 consciousnesses? So like that, so have slightly different, but they all agree. All these great Nalanda masters agree that fundamental nature of our mind is clear or is sort of pure and not penetrated by this distorted mental state, no matter how deep-rooted, no matter how ingrained the distorted mental states are, like ignorance or confusion, which I mentioned earlier. Nevertheless, the fundamental nature of the mind is clear. And that's the interpretation of meaning of clear. And then another part of that term is called awareness, aware, and this is what, again, the function of the mind. It is talking about more in the functions of the mind. The function of the mind, the function of the consciousness, the function of the awareness is to cognize, to realize, to see, to understand, to feel, to experience of the contents of the subjects or the like that. Now, not just reveal. Earlier we talked about clear but here is more, the second, that awareness, aware, clear and aware, or clear and knowing, sometimes translated. In the second part, that knowing or the aware, that element, that word really explains the one of the main functions of the mind or the consciousness. That is, the ability to cognize, ability to experience, ability to aware of, understanding, to understand, and that is really something useful to know. So along the first one, the second, which I mentioned, meaning of clear, which maybe just briefly to say here, then later, when we talk about the training the mind, and this will make connection. So the clear in the meaning of the fundamental nature of our mind is pure. Pure in the sense the fundamental nature of the mind is not penetrated by these confusions or by this ignorance, attachment, and so on and so forth. That philosophy, that assertion, gives gives the opportunity to train the mind, to the earlier one of the point which I'm, if ignorance or confusions are the main sort of, one of the main causes that makes our life, to feel constant or nagging feeling of something is not right, something is not complete, then how to sort it out, and that is through, the wisdom, cultivation of wisdom or panya. And that comes with this one, that because the fundamental nature of the mind is pure, not penetrated by confusion, so therefore it is perfectly possible the ignorance or the confusions can be eliminated or get rid of by cultivation of wisdom. And that is what also have the connection with this definition, clear or knowing, or also to do with the mind training. We can train our mind because it is by nature or at the level of fundamental nature, it is clear, it is pure, and that concept also go with that. Something quite useful to know that. So that is what we have deal with. We have covered with this. The basic and the nature of the mind. What is mind? What is consciousness? And what is nature of mind? What is? So this one, particularly what is nature of mind, it has, among these great Nalanda masters have a very, a rigorous argument to talk about, particularly in the philosophical viewpoint, which we will not go at this time, because looking at the philosophy is another stage. Now, if that is the case, then as I mentioned earlier, in the Abhidhamma texts, Abhidhamma literature, the mind is categorized into two, called the main mind or main consciousness, and the mental consciousness. Mental factor, or the mind or mental factor. We can first use that kind of simple term, mind and mental factor. That's the one way to categorize. Main, mind and mental factor. Mind and mental factor. So when you say mind, of course, mental factors are also mind, but have a different sort of, what is the right word? Have a, what's the right word? Yeah, have a different layers or different levels. They are in the different levels, although they are also mind, but they are in the different levels, or because of their functions, mental factors functions, it makes slightly different from the mind which we talk about here in that category, two category, mind and the mental factor. When in this category, when we say mind, then it is talking about another term that we need to use is called main mind or primary mind. There are different terms, primary mind or main mind, whichever that you prefer you can use. In Tibetan, it is called Zosem. Some translator use primary mind, and some translators use main mind. I usually use main mind. So main mind. So now we come to one of yesterday's questions. So in the main mind, most of these great masters, talk about there are 6 main minds which operate within us in this, where we are in this realm. In this realm, desire realm, which I mentioned, desire realm, the realm where there are all the 6 objects, like the shapes and colors, smell, taste, tactile, and all those 6, sound, all those 5 desire objects are around us, and so we are equipped. We are equipped with this 5 sense consciousness, 5 sense main mind, 5 sense consciousnesses. So, these are, so the main mind can be again looked at into 2 categories. In the first category, there are 5, that is sight, hearing, smelling, taste, and tactile, body consciousness, tongue consciousness, nose, ear, sight, smell. So those are the 5 sense consciousnesses, or we can also call 5 main sense, 5 sense consciousnesses. 5 sense consciousnesses. Then on top of that, 6th, which is called mental consciousness. 6th mental consciousness. So those are the 6 main mind or 6 primary consciousnesses that we can call it. Now, before moving a little bit further, I want to say a few words on this. Now, our present life, and this is which also I think is important for studying these kind of Nalanda masters, important knowledge. Our present life, and particularly in this 21st century, in the modern life, the function out of the six consciousnesses, 6 mental, 6 consciousnesses, 5 sense consciousnesses, and the 6th mental consciousness. Out of these 6, the 5 sense consciousnesses are dominated in our lives. We are very much become slave of, to fulfill, to feed please the five sense consciousnesses. Even when we are in the mental, working with the mental level, that the mental thinking, memory, wishing, and all those, if we observe, mainly related to some kind of smell, taste, tactile, color, and so forth, which is very, very, from this great Nalanda master's point of view, not very positive. Okay, I think I should stop here. Today is my talk, and tomorrow I would like to build on there. Now already our 15 minutes is past. Sometimes if I talk more than 45 minutes, people start to doze off. So I want to stop here. And if there are questions, we'll have questions.
So we'll start with the question session.
Okay.
So thank you very much for your beautiful lecture today
Thank
on
you.
understanding the role of mind. Yes. This pure state of mind, the clear state of mind, the fundamental state of mind. Yes. So I request Dr. Anita Dudhane to conduct this session of the question and answers.
Thank you.
Anita, the floor is yours.
Geshe-la, the
Yeah.
first question is awareness of, sorry, one second. The first question is consciousness an emergent property of the brain, or is it not?
Okay. That is very, very important questions. So now, of course, during those great Indian masters' time period, their understanding about the brain is not that highly developed like where we are now in 21st century. Nevertheless, these great Indian masters have talked about to function our different kinds of consciousnesses, different types of awareness. It functions on the basis of three, what they call is three factors. And out of the three factors, the one factor is external or the object. For example, my eye consciousness to see and to perceive shapes and colors. Of course, the external, that light and shapes, these are one of the factors. Another factor is more internal. What they call is, the subtle organs. What they talk, why they use the term subtle. Our ordinary, eyes cannot perceive that organ. They're called the subtle organ. Subtle organ. That's the second factor. So in that level, we can talk about connection, our consciousness connection with the brain, within the sense of organ. And then another the factor out of the three factors, which I thought we will talk tomorrow, but it doesn't matter. We'll briefly touch on here today. The third factor is, preceding consciousness. The previous, just moment before my eye consciousness, perceive a beautiful flower. Prior to that, that immediate sort of consciousness is also another factor. So there are three factors are mentioned by these great Indian masters: awareness to operate, or consciousness to operate. And my my interest here is in relation to the question is may have some connection with the second that factor, which is they call is subtle organ, which they consider as a matter, like the physical, but they are very, very subtle. We ordinary sight cannot perceive. So it may to do with the brain, neuro function, and that's the one thing. Although, as I mentioned, they don't talk about brain directly. Now, currently these days, for example, mindfulness meditation, which is very popular in the West, and also some other nowadays, like the experiencing strong love, strong compassion, or strong anger, also detect some kind of activities in the neuro, what's called the events. So obviously, it seems there are some strong connections. But here, the Buddhist masters. Also, they before I move to the next, the Buddhist masters, these great Indian masters, they talk about our sense consciousnesses are very gross, and they will stop when the physical function of physical body stops. And therefore, I'm sure there's a strong connection with our brain system or brain, the neuro system. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the next question.
Yeah. The next question is, why is bodhicitta the main mind, but not a mental factor?
Okay. It sounds somebody who is a Buddhist. Okay, now, this has a strong debate among the Nalanda masters. Some masters, they say bodhicitta is mental factor, not the main mind. But the others, they commonly hear, assertion is bodhicitta, or this is main mind. Why they say it is main mind? This group, mainstream assertion is this. Bodhicitta is a result of, or the culmination of two mental factors. When the two different mental factors are trained within ourselves, and the result of that training, our mind, the mental state, seeks the consciousness, which is the main mind, will experience that result of training into those two mental factors. And two mental factors are two yearnings or longing, or two aspirations. These are the same. The two aspirations are the aspiration or yearning to work for the sake of all living creatures. When that aspiration is repeatedly, with the reasons, repeatedly bring into our mind, bring into conscious again and again and again and again, and through that, then the second, the mental factor, which is aspiration to experience oneself, to experience fully awakened mind, Now we are talking about Buddhist theory, that is enlightenment, that is Buddhahood. That second aspiration, that second mental factor, when these two mental factors are, repeatedly bring into individuals' mind stream, eventually these two mental factors become very spontaneous, effortlessly occur within ourselves. That occurring, really sort of captures that experience of that bodhicitta, and that is called main mind. So, like there's which I thought I would talk tomorrow. Like the two mental factors are those five fingers and the palm, and then we call them hand, or when the palm and the five fingers are joined together, and when they function, then we call the hand. So very similar to that. Okay.
So Geshe-la, yesterday there was one question which I couldn't ask, so
Yes.
I'm going to ask now.
Yeah.
It is, how do we see mind with mind?
Okay. That is not easy to what's called to experience, to understand, but through the training it is possible. Through the training it is possible. For example, although some of my past joyful experiences or the painful experiences, those experiences I can still feel. I can still sort of feel like the joyful experiences which I still have, when I took my full bhikshu ordination. And then soon after taking full bhikshu ordination in front of the His Holiness Dalai Lama at Bodh Gaya, then soon after that, going to what's called the stupa at Bodh Gaya stupa in front of the Buddha and saying few prayers. That was something very, very joyful, experience in my life. And that still I can feel that joy, that sort of entire sort of, the what's called the environment, the entire that, things I can still, imagine and visualize and feel. And, those days, there aren't any guards to search your bags or anything like that. You can go straight. And so our mind can experience, the mind, because, when we say, as I briefly mentioned when I talk about the mind is mind or consciousness is a event, a process. It is not a static, a process of, experiencing, a process of knowing, a process of, the understanding, awareness, process of awareness. It's not static phenomena. So in that process, it is perfectly possible we can experience another experience or another awareness, take as an object of that, our awareness or our mind. Okay, so that is, I'm not sure whether I answered that question properly or not, but that's coming to. Okay.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much. I think we'll close today's session and continue tomorrow.
Thank you.
I think Geshe-la would speak on the nature of consciousness tomorrow, right?
Yes, I will continue a little bit on that.
Yes.
And go further.
Yes. So thank you very much for your beautiful lecture today on the mind. And thank you very much for all those who have attended the lecture and your beautiful questions too. So I hope all of you join in tomorrow at 3:30 at the same time as today. So wish to see you all tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
A very good evening to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.